A week of rain was not an inconvenience for ancient humans. It was a slow-motion survival crisis that most people never think about when they imagine prehistoric life. No fire, no food, no way to track animals, and a group of people trapped inside a structure that was quietly collapsing around them. This is what a rainy week actually looked like before roofs existed. When rain arrived and stayed, the first casualty was not the fire itself, but the ability to maintain it. Keeping embers alive in a flooding, wind-exposed shelter became an exhausting and increasingly desperate task. Damp wood hissed and choked. Wet tinder refused to catch. The fire shrank from a sustaining source of heat, light, and protection into a fragile thread that someone had to guard constantly, feeding it scraps of the driest material left, knowing that if it went out entirely, the group's situation would shift from difficult to genuinely dangerous. No warmth through the night, no cooked food, and no perimeter of light to discourage the predators that were still moving through the wet dark, completely unbothered by weather that was quietly overwhelming the humans sheltering from it. The river crossings flooded next, cutting the group off from the hunting territories they depended on. The ground washed away the animal tracks that ancient humans read the way we read road signs. Within hours of heavy rain, the landscape became illegible. The animals retreated deeper into cover and changed their movement patterns in ways that made them almost impossible to anticipate. And the food already stored inside the shelter was rotting faster than anyone could eat it. A week of rain was not 7 boring days. It was a cascading series of failures compounding against a group with no backup systems and no emergency reserves. Now add the shelter itself. Most ancient humans did not live in caves. This matters. Caves were rare, often occupied by animals with no interest in sharing, and rarely located near wherever a group happened to be when the weather turned. Most ancient humans sheltered in temporary structures, branches bent and lashed together, animal hides stretched over frames, bark layered for waterproofing. In ordinary conditions, these worked. Under a week of sustained heavy rain, they flooded, weakened at every joint, and soaked through their insulating layers until the interior became nearly uninhabitable. Someone had to stay awake at all times to monitor the structure, coax the struggling fire, and watch the perimeter. The rain did not offer ancient humans a week of enforced rest. It gave them a week of relentless low-level crisis management in wet clothes with diminishing food. And yet something else was happening at exactly the same time. Forced into stillness by conditions that made hunting and foraging impossible, ancient humans turned to the work that good weather never allowed time for. Dulled stone tools were resharpened and repaired with the patience that daily movement never permitted. Hides were cleaned, stretched, and stitched into usable material. Bones from previous hunts were carved into hooks and needles. The group's physical inventory of survival equipment, constantly degrading through daily use, got the maintenance it had been waiting for. But it was the other kind of work that mattered most. The transmission of knowledge from experienced members to younger ones required two things that the normal pace of prehistoric life almost never provided simultaneously: time and everyone being in the same place. How to read a landscape for animal sign, how to distinguish edible plants from poisonous ones by scent and texture, how to navigate at night, how to treat an infected wound before it became fatal. All of this knowledge existed only inside human heads, and the only way to move it from one head to another was direct instruction that required stillness and attention from both parties. Rain produced the stillness. The group produced the attention. Now, the cave paintings. This requires an important distinction. Most ancient humans sheltering from rain were in those temporary branch and hide structures, and anything they painted or marked on organic surfaces, stretched hide, bark, wood, has long since disappeared. But the rare group that found access to a rock shelter or cave alcove during a prolonged storm faced a different set of conditions entirely. Deep inside stone, the temperature was stable, the air was still, and the walls provided a permanent surface. The pigments were available: ochre ground from iron-rich rock, charcoal from the fire's edge, animal fat as a binding agent. The enforced inactivity removed every competing demand on the group's time, and the psychological pressure of confinement in a small dark space, separated from the landscape and the usual rhythms of survival, may have produced something that the relentless activity of good weather systematically suppressed. The oldest deliberate art on Earth may not have been made during sacred rituals on clear days. It may have been made during the longest, most frustrating, most dangerous rainy weeks of prehistoric life, by people who had run out of other options and found for the first time that they had nothing to do but look at the walls. There is one final dimension to the rainy week that deserves acknowledgement. 8 people trapped in a small space under physical stress with shrinking food and nowhere to go is not a peaceful social arrangement. Conflicts emerged over resources, over space, over noise, over position in the group's hierarchy, in conditions where the usual resolution of simply leaving was not available. Managing those tensions without fracturing the group required a particular kind of intelligence, not strength, not speed, not the ability to read tracks or start fire, the capacity to negotiate, distract, defer, diffuse. The social skill that made ancient humans effective as a species was tested most severely not during the hunt, but during the week when the hunt became impossible. Bad weather may have been one of the most consistent training grounds for the kind of human intelligence that is hardest to see in the fossil record, and most consequential to everything that followed. So the next time a rainy day makes you restless, irritable, and weirdly compelled toward a project you have been avoiding for weeks, pay attention. Ancient humans used those same weeks to repair what was broken, teach what they knew, and in some cases leave behind images that outlasted everything else they ever made by 40,000 years. The rain did not stop them. It pressed something out of them that ordinary days could not.